You wake to the sound of thunder, except it isn't thunder. Thunder ends. This sound, this grinding, relentless percussion that vibrates through your teeth and rattles your ribcage never stops. It's been going for 47 days straight, ever since your transport dropped you into this Emperor-forsaken hellhole, and you've learned not to think of it as sound anymore. It's just the texture of the air here, the way this world breathes. Your name is Markus Venn. You're 19 years old. You have brown hair, or you did before they shaved it down to stubble. You have a mother back on Cadia, or what used to be Cadia, before the sky broke and the world screamed. And she wrote you a letter 3 months ago that you've read so many times the paper is falling apart at the creases. She told you to be brave. She told you the Emperor protects. She told you she loves you. You're thinking about that letter now, sitting in a trench that might as well be a grave on a world whose name you can't pronounce and won't remember. The mud here isn't really mud. It's a mixture of soil, water, and things you don't think about. Things that used to be people. The smell is indescribable. Promethium fumes mixing with rot, with cordite, with the acrid tang of fire scorching air. You breathe through your mouth when you can, through the recycled filters of your rebreather when you can't, and you taste metal and plastic and despair. Around you, your platoon waits. Trooper Hald is cleaning his lasgun for the 14th time today, his hands moving in mechanical repetition because the alternative is thinking. Corporal Dinas is muttering prayers to the God Emperor under his breath, the words running together into a kind of verbal armor. Someone down the line is crying quietly, and no one looks at him because looking would make it real. You wonder if the rations will be better tomorrow. They won't be, they never are, but wondering about it is something human to do, something normal, and you cling to that normalcy like a lifeline. Your hands are shaking. They've been shaking since the artillery barrage started 2 hours ago, and you tell yourself it's just the cold, just the adrenaline, just anything except what you know it really is. You're afraid. Not the sharp, clean fear of immediate danger, but the deep, nauseating fear of someone who knows, who has always known, that they're going to die badly. And then the order comes. It doesn't come with fanfare. There's no dramatic pause, no moment of preparation. Lieutenant Markov simply turns, his face gray beneath the grime, and speaks 3 words that change everything. Fix bayonets, charge. Let me take you inside those 3 seconds. Let me slow time down until each heartbeat is a thunderclap, until each breath is a lifetime. Second 1. Confusion crashes through you like ice water. You heard the order, your ears work fine, but your brain stumbles over the meaning because it can't possibly mean what you think it means. Fix bayonets. Char. You're 100 meters from the enemy line across open ground, and you can see the kill zones from here. You can see the overlapping fields of fire, the bunker emplacements, the razor wire glinting dully in the smoke-filtered light. This isn't a charge. This is execution dressed up as tactics. Your eyes flick left, right. Other soldiers are moving, hands going to bayonets, the metallic skink of blades locking into place. But they're moving slowly, uncertainly, like men walking through water. Second 2. Calculation. Your mind, desperate to find sense in senselessness, does the math. 50 meters to the wire. Another 50 beyond that to the fortifications. You'll be in the open the entire time. The enemy has heavy bolters. You saw the tracers yesterday. Watch them turn Sergeant Krell into a red mist that used to be a person. They have mortars. They have time. Your hands haven't moved toward your bayonet. You're frozen, paralyzed by the simple arithmetic of survival. A question is forming in your throat, pressing against your teeth. Why? Why this way? Why now? The soldier next to you, Hald, with his obsessively cleaned lasgun, is moving. He's fixed his bayonet. His face is blank, empty, already dead, but he's moving. Second 3. This is the moment. This is the crack in the foundation, the single instant where your humanity betrays you. You see Commissar Roth. He's standing behind the line, his black greatcoat pristine despite the mud, his face carved from stone and old prayers. His right hand rests on the grip of his bolt pistol, not drawing it, not threatening, just resting, a reminder, a promise. His eyes sweep the line, and for a fraction of a heartbeat they meet yours. You see yourself reflected in those eyes, a boy who is thinking, a soldier who is questioning, a weakness that must be excised. Your hands move toward your bayonet. You lock it into place. You prepare to stand, to charge, to die like you're supposed to. But 3 seconds have passed. 3 seconds too many. Time snaps back to normal speed like a rubber band breaking. You charge. You stumble over the trench lip, your boots finding purchase in mud that grabs at you like hands. You run. La's fire screams overhead. Someone to your right ceases to exist in a spray of meat and fabric. You keep running. Your mind is screaming the entire time, a wordless animal howl of terror and denial, but your body is doing what it's trained to do. You raise your last gun. You pull the trigger at shapes in the smoke. You don't know if you hit anything. You don't care. A mortar round hits 15 meters away. The concussion picks you up and throws you down. Dirt rains. You can't hear anything except a high, thin ringing. You get up. You charge. The wire is ahead. You see Hald hit it, see him hang there for a moment like a moth pinned to a board before the heavy bolter finds him. You throw yourself flat. You crawl. The wire cuts through your uniform, parts the skin of your hands. You don't feel it. You reach the enemy fortification and it's empty. They retreated during the barrage. The position you just charged across 100 meters of killing ground to reach was already abandoned. Every death, and you can see the bodies behind you, so many bodies, was pointless. You survive. You sit in that empty bunker, breathing hard, bleeding from a dozen minor wounds you don't remember receiving, and you think, I made it. Emperor's mercy, I made it. 12 hours later, you're standing in a Medici bay and you realize you haven't made it at all. The Medici bay is wrong. You knew something was wrong the moment they brought you here instead of to the platoon's rest area. You're not injured, not seriously. The wire cuts are superficial. The concussion is minor. You should be with your unit, getting debriefed, receiving the standard post-engagement rations and maybe, if anyone cares, a word of acknowledgement for surviving. Instead, you're here. The bay is large, too large, it echoes. The lighting is harsh, clinical, the kind that makes everything look dead even while it's still alive. There are tables, surgical tables, you realize, arranged in neat rows. Most are empty, some are not. Around you, they're screaming. Not the sharp screaming of immediate pain, but something worse. Something exhausted and hopeless and endless, like the sound the world makes when it's ending. You try not to look at the tables where the screaming is coming from. You fail. You see shapes that used to be human. You see Medici specialists working with calm efficiency. You see things you will never unsee. A commissar you don't recognize enters the bay. Not Roth, someone younger, harder, with eyes like chips of ice. He carries a data slate. He reads from it without looking at you. Trooper Markus Venn, service number 4471 Delta 9. You are hereby charged with cowardice in the face of the enemy, specifically hesitation to obey a direct combat order, resulting in a delay of approximately 3 seconds before compliance. The words don't make sense. You charged, you fought, you survived, you followed the order. But you begin. You hesitated, the commissar says. His voice is flat, bored almost. He's done this before, many times. Hesitation is contagion. Doubt is heresy. The sentence is correction through judicial flaying, to be followed by medical reconstruction and return to active duty. Your legs stop working. 2 armsmen catch you before you fall. They drag you toward an empty table and you see it clearly for the first time. The restraints, the medical equipment arranged with careful precision, the instruments that catch the harsh light and throw it back in sharp, bright edges. Please, you hear yourself saying. Please, I charged, I followed orders, I fought, please. No one responds. The armsmen secure you to the table, wrists, ankles, chest, forehead. The restraints are soft, padded. They're designed for this. You can't move anything except your eyes. A Medici specialist approaches. She's young, maybe mid-30s, with tired eyes and capable hands. She wears the red robes of the medical corps, not the black of the commissariat. She checks the restraints with practiced efficiency, then meets your eyes. I'm Medici specialist Henna, she says quietly. I need you to remain as calm as possible during the procedure. Panic increases heart rate, which increases blood loss. Do you understand? You try to speak. Nothing comes out except a sound that might be a word in some language you've forgotten. She mistakes your paralysis for comprehension. She nods. "This will be difficult," she continues, arranging instruments on a tray beside the table. "But the Emperor protects. Your suffering serves the Imperium. Remember that." She turns away, attending to final preparations, and you see the instruments clearly. Scalpels, clamps, things you don't have names for, things whose purpose is obvious and terrible. And in that moment, secured to a table in a medici bay that smells of disinfectant and blood, you understand the truth that every soldier in the Imperial Guard learns eventually. In the Imperium of man, doubt is not a thought, it is a disease, and the cure is administered in skin. The medici returns, she holds a scalpel, the light catches its edge. "Begin documentation," she says to no one you can see. Subject is Trooper Markus Venn, age 19 standard, convicted of hesitation during combat operations. Procedure: judicial flaying with full consciousness maintenance and regenerative reconstruction. Authorization: Commissariat Directive 77 Theta. She looks down at you. Her expression is not cruel, it's professional. This is her job, she's good at it. "The Emperor protects," she says again, and you realize she genuinely believes it. The scalpel descends toward your left hand. You open your mouth to scream, to beg, to pray, but she's faster. The blade parts your skin. "Let me pull your perspective back. Let me show you what Trooper Markus Venn couldn't see, strapped to that table, drowning in agony that language fails to describe. The war he's fighting, the war he just hesitated in, involves 50 million soldiers. 50 million. Let that number settle into your mind for a moment. 50 million individual human beings, each with thoughts, fears, hopes, each with a mother who wrote them letters or didn't, each standing in trenches carved into the flesh of a world that has been burning for 7 years straight. The entire population of a major city-state back in our world, mobilized, armed, and fed into the grinding gears of a single planetary conflict. And this is a minor engagement, a footnote. Somewhere in the vast archives of the Departmentum Militarum, this world rates exactly one line of text: compliance operations ongoing, acceptable losses. The scale is impossible. The human mind wasn't designed to comprehend it. But try anyway, because understanding the scale is understanding why what's happening to Markus isn't cruelty. From the Imperium's perspective, it's necessity. Imagine trying to command an army of 50 million. Not from a comfortable position, not with instantaneous communication, but across a front that spans 3 continents. Your orders are transmitted via Vox network when the network functions. When it doesn't, and it rarely functions perfectly, they're carried by servitors, by runner, by hardline cables strung through trenches that collapse and must be redug daily. An order given by high command might take 3 days to reach the frontline trenches. By the time it arrives, the tactical situation that prompted it has changed 17 times. The enemy has moved. The weather has turned. The entire operational objective might be obsolete, but the order must still be obeyed. Because if every officer, every sergeant, every corporal exercises judgment, if they question, if they assess, if they think, then you don't have an army. You have 50 million individuals, each making their own decisions, and the coherence that allows organized warfare collapses into chaos. The Imperium learned this lesson 10,000 years ago, and it has never forgotten. When you command forces across distances measured in light years, when your armies number in the hundreds of millions, when your wars span centuries, you cannot afford the luxury of thought at the tactical level. Orders come down. Orders are obeyed, immediately, completely, without question. The alternative is extinction. Let me introduce you to someone. Lord Commissar Victor Roth is 53 years old. He served in the Commissariat for 30 years. He's overseen the execution of 4,732 Imperial Guardsmen. He remembers every one. He sits in his quarters now, a converted bunker that's marginally less terrible than the trenches, with actual walls and a door that closes, reviewing reports over breakfast. His breakfast consists of protein gruel that tastes like cardboard soaked in oil, and recaf that's been recycled through the ship's water purification system so many times it has a vaguely metallic aftertaste. He doesn't notice the taste anymore. The report on his data slate lists yesterday's disciplinary actions: 3 executions for desertion, 7 floggings for insubordination, 1 judicial flaying for combat hesitation, 12 field punishments for minor infractions. He approves each with a stylus stroke. His recaf has gone cold. He doesn't notice that either. Roth is not a sadist. This is important to understand. He takes no pleasure in what he does. When he signs an execution order, his hand doesn't shake with excitement. It moves with the mechanical precision of someone completing necessary paperwork. He's authorizing the death or torture of human beings the way you might approve a supply requisition. Because to him, that's exactly what it is. Resource management. You see, Roth genuinely believes. He believes in the Imperium. He believes in the Emperor. He believes that humanity teeters on the edge of extinction every moment of every day, held back from the abyss only by discipline, faith, and the willingness to do absolutely anything, no matter how monstrous, to survive. His internal monologue, if you could hear it, would sound almost reasonable. I kill hundreds to save millions. I break bodies to preserve humanity. Every execution is a lesson. Every punishment is a barrier against chaos. When I order a man flayed, I'm not torturing him. I'm teaching 1,000 others to obey instantly, without thought, and that instant obedience will save their lives when the enemy breaches the line and there's no time for questions. He would tell you, if you asked, about the training he received in the Commissariat's Schola Progenium, how they taught him that mercy is treason, that compassion is tactical incompetence, that the moment you see your soldiers as people rather than resources, you failed in your duty. They showed him the historical records. Worlds lost because an officer hesitated. Armies rooted because a commander showed mercy. Entire crusades failed because someone somewhere allowed doubt to take root. And they gave him the tools, the bolt pistol, the authority, the legal framework to ensure it never happens under his command. Roth keeps a personal diary. All commissars do. It's tradition. The diary is bound in human leather. Specifically, it's bound in the skin of Trooper Jarl Mennick, the first soldier Roth ever ordered flogged to death, 28 years ago. Roth was 25, fresh from the Schola, assigned to his first regiment, and Mennick had struck an officer. The flogging took 6 hours. Mennick died after 4, but they continued for the full 6 because the regiment needed to learn the lesson completely. Roth stood there the entire time, his face expressionless, his hands clasped behind his back, while a man screamed himself into silence. That night, he vomited until his stomach was empty. The next night, he slept through without dreams. By the end of his first year, he could watch executions while eating lunch. The diary was a gift from his supervising Commissar General, so you never forget your first, so you remember what we are and why we must be this way. Roth writes in it every night, brief entries, clinical observations. Day 1847, 3 executions, all necessary. One showed remarkable courage at the end, requested his personal effects be sent to his mother. Request denied, all personal effects revert to regiment. Discipline remains acceptable. Las weapon maintenance continues to be inadequate. Floggings will increase until standards improve. The entry says nothing about the men as people. Doesn't mention their names, their faces, their last words, because allowing himself to see them as individuals would make his job impossible, and his job must be done. Every commissar understands this. Every commissar has overseen judicial flayings. It's not exceptional. It's not noteworthy. It's procedure, as routine as morning inspections and ammunition requisitions. The commissariat doesn't see this as a moral failing. They see it as moral necessity. Let me tell you a story. It's in the official histories, taught in every commissariat training facility, held up as the perfect example of why their methods are not just justified but essential. The 88th Krieg Regiment, 6,200 soldiers, veterans of a dozen campaigns, decorated for valor, one of the most effective units in their sector. They were assigned to assault a chaos-held fortress on a world called Varsavia. The fortress was strategically crucial. Its fall would open supply lines for an entire crusade. High Command gave the order, take the fortress at any cost. The 88th's commander, Colonel Hendrik Vorn, studied the fortress. He saw the fortifications, the overlapping fields of fire, the minefields. He calculated casualties, 67% minimum, possibly higher. He hesitated. For 48 hours, he delayed the assault. He requested additional artillery support. He suggested alternative approaches. He questioned whether the strategic value truly justified the cost. High Command responded, attack immediately. Vorn delayed another day, writing a detailed report explaining why the assault as ordered would be suicide, why alternative methods would achieve the same objective with fewer casualties. His report was received, noted, denied. By the time the 88th finally attacked, 3 days late, the Chaos forces had received reinforcements. The fortress that would have fallen to 6,000 creatures now required 60,000. The assault took 4 months instead of 4 days. 100,000 Imperial Guardsmen died taking that fortress, all because one man hesitated, all because one commander thought his judgment superior to his orders. The Commissar General overseeing the 88th, Lord Commissar General Hask Mendel, was charged with failure to maintain discipline. His failure to execute Vorn immediately, to prevent the hesitation before it became catastrophe, was deemed the root cause of those 100,000 deaths. Mendel's trial lasted 1 hour. His sentence was carried out in front of the entire regimental command of every unit in the sector. They flayed him alive, not in a medici bay with anesthetics and medical supervision. In the open air, in front of 10,000 assembled officers with nothing but chains and knives. It took 12 hours. He was conscious for 9 of them. When they finished, they tanned his skin using traditional methods. They stretched it over a wooden frame. They painted it with the seal of the commissariat and the words, "This is the price of mercy." That banner flies to this day. Mounted in the primary training facility of the Commissariat Schola on Ultima Terminus. Every graduating commissar walks beneath it on their way to receive their bolt pistol and oath. The lesson is clear: mercy kills, hesitation dooms millions, personal judgment is the luxury of the dead, and the truly horrifying part, the truly crushing, inescapable truth. Within the logic of the Imperium, they might be right. There's a philosophical framework underpinning all of this. It's not random brutality. It's systematic, reasoned, and based on 10,000 years of accumulated experience fighting in a universe that actively wants humanity dead. The Imperium believes, knows, that chaos corrupts through doubt. This isn't metaphor. In the Warhammer 40,000 universe, this is literal fact. The warp, that hellish parallel dimension that ships travel through, is home to entities that feed on emotion, on thought, on the cracks in human certainty. When a human being questions, when they doubt, when they allow their mind to wander into forbidden territory, they create a microscopic fissure in reality. Usually that fissure closes. Usually nothing happens. But sometimes, often enough to be statistically significant across populations of trillions, something notices, something slips through. A whisper, a suggestion, a promise. Chaos corruption doesn't announce itself with horns and thunder. It begins with a question: why must I obey? Why must I suffer? Why shouldn't I survive whatever the cost? The Imperium has watched worlds fall this way, not to invasion, not to war, but to doubt. A commander questions his orders. The question seems reasonable. The orders are suicidal. Why throw away lives needlessly? But the question opens a crack and a whisper enters. You could save your men. You could withdraw. You know better than those fools in command. The commander retreats. He saves his regiment. He feels virtuous. 6 months later, he's making sacrifices to the dark gods and wearing the skin of his junior officers as a cloak. This has happened hundreds of times, thousands. The archives of the Inquisition are full of case studies detailing exactly this progression. So the Imperium's response is brutal in its simplicity. Eliminate thought at the tactical level. Condition soldiers to obey instantly, without question, without the pause that allows corruption to take root. They achieve this through systematic terror, by making the consequence of hesitation so immediate, so visceral, so unspeakably horrible that the hindbrain overrides the forebrain, by creating soldiers who fear their commissar more than they fear death, more than they fear the enemy, more than they fear the howling void between stars. And it works. Regiments with active commissarial oversight show demonstrably lower rates of chaos corruption. Units where discipline is enforced through judicial flaying have fewer instances of hesitation, fewer cases of mass panic, fewer failures of morale. The Imperium has the statistics. They've run the numbers across 10,000 years and billions of soldiers. Their conclusion is inescapable. Systematic brutalization of their own soldier saves lives. Prevents corruption, preserves humanity. The logic is airtight. Within their universe, by their rules, it's not just justified, it's necessary. Sitting in his quarters, reviewing disciplinary reports over cold recaf, Lord Commissar Roth understands all of this. He's internalized it so completely that it's no longer philosophy, it's instinct. When he signed the order for Markus Venn's judicial flaying, he didn't pause, didn't question. He saw the infraction, 3 seconds of hesitation, and applied the prescribed correction. Because in a war involving 50 million soldiers across a galaxy where billions of enemies seek humanity's extinction, where the very fabric of reality is hostile to human thought, there is no room for mercy. There is only discipline. There is only obedience. There is only survival purchased at any price, no matter how monstrous. And if that makes the Imperium into monsters, then they will be monsters, gladly, proudly, because the alternative is extinction, and extinction is forever. Let's return to Markus. 4 hours have passed. 4 hours that contain entire lifetimes of agony compressed into moments so terrible that time loses all meaning. You exist only in the eternal present of pain where there is no past, no future, only the endless now of nerves screaming messages your brain can't process. But I need you to understand the procedure. I need you to see how the Imperium has systematized even this, turned torture into protocol, agony into paperwork. So let me walk you through it. Slowly. Completely. Let me show you what discipline becomes when it's made flesh. Medici specialist Henna works with the calm efficiency of someone who's done this 47 times before. Markus is her 48th. She begins with the medical assessment. Markus's vital signs are recorded: heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen saturation, neural response, all within acceptable parameters. He's healthy, which is important. The weak die too quickly. Anesthetics are prepared. Not for pain relief, pain is the purpose, but for shock prevention. The human body has a failsafe. When trauma becomes overwhelming, it simply stops. The heart arrests. The brain shuts down. Death becomes an escape. The Imperium doesn't allow escape. The cocktail Henna administers includes combat stimulants, adrenaline regulators, and compounds developed specifically for this purpose. They keep the heart beating. They keep the brain conscious. They trap you inside your body while that body is systematically destroyed. This will make your heart race, Henna explains, injecting the first compound into Markus's arm. Her tone is exactly as it would be if she were administering a vaccine. You'll feel panic, but try to breathe through it. Hyperventilation causes complications. Markus can't respond. His throat has closed with terror. He makes a sound, not a word, just a sound, and Henna notes it on her data slate. Subject experiencing expected pre-procedure anxiety, vital signs stable. Antiseptics are next. She swabs his entire body with methodical precision. Every inch of skin that will be removed must be sterilized first. Infection is a risk, and infections are inefficient. The Imperium wants you to survive this. That's not mercy. That's worse than no mercy. We'll begin with your left hand, Henna says, arranging instruments on a tray. Extremities first, working inward. The procedure will take between 4 and 6 hours, depending on your physiology. Try to conserve your strength. She picks up the scalpel. The light catches its edge, throwing a thin line of reflected brightness across Markus's vision. "The Emperor protects," she says one more time, then she cuts. How do you describe pain that exceeds the scale of human experience? Language fails, metaphor fails. "I can tell you it's like fire, but fire ends. I can tell you it's like being torn apart, but that suggests something quick. This is neither quick nor ending." The scalpel parts skin from flesh with surgical precision. Henna's hand is steady, her pressure exact. She's creating an incision that circles Markus's left index finger at the base, then running it up along the finger's length. The skin separates. Beneath it, muscle tissue glistens, red and raw. Markus screams. It's not a human sound. It's something primal, something from the evolutionary basement of the brain where language doesn't exist. It tears out of his throat with enough force to damage vocal cords. Henna doesn't pause. She uses a specialized tool, a curved blade with a handle designed for ergonomic comfort during extended use, to begin separating the skin from the underlying tissue. Small, careful cuts, peeling it back like the skin of a fruit. In the first minute, Markus tries to be brave. Some part of him, the part trained by 47 days of military discipline, thinks that if he can just endure, if he can just show courage, maybe it will stop. Maybe someone will recognize the mistake and end this. It doesn't stop. In the second minute, he screams for his mother. The word comes out distorted, broken by the sounds he's making, but it's recognizable. "Mother, mother, please, mother." She's not here. She's light years away, probably dead. Cadia fell after all, and even if she could hear, she couldn't help. In the third minute, he begs to die. The words tumble out between screams, a litany of desperation. Kill me, please, Emperor, please, kill me, end it, stop, please." No one responds. This is expected. This is normal. In the fourth minute, language leaves him entirely. He makes sounds, wet, broken, animal sounds, but they're not words anymore. They're just noise, the sound of a system overloading. Henna finishes the index finger. She moves to the middle finger, then the ring finger, then the pinky, then the thumb. 15 minutes per finger. She's done this 47 times. She knows the timing precisely. Pull your perspective back. Look beyond the table where Markus has been reduced to meat and screaming. 200 soldiers from his platoon stand in the observation gallery. The gallery is elevated, looking down into the Medici Bay through Armorcry's windows. It's designed specifically for this, clear sightlines, acoustics that carry every sound. Nothing is hidden. Nothing is softened. This is mandatory attendance. Each soldier had their name checked off a roster. Absence is punished by flogging. Closing your eyes is punished by flogging. Looking away is punished by flogging. You will watch. You will learn. Most stand paralyzed, their faces gray, their eyes fixed on something that will live behind their eyelids for the rest of their lives, however long that is. Some vomit. The first few times someone retches, others turn to look. After an hour, no one turns. The sound becomes background noise. 3 soldiers have fainted. They lie where they fell. No one helps them. They'll be disciplined later. Focus on Corporal Dinas. He's 24, a veteran of 2 years, which makes him practically ancient in Guard terms. He served in the same squad as Markus. They weren't friends. Friendship is dangerous when everyone around you dies, but they talk sometimes. Shared rations. Markus once told him about his mother's letters. Dinas is watching now, and he's learning the lesson the Imperium intends to teach. Except he's not just learning about obedience. Every time Markus screams, Dinas flinches. Not physically, he's been trained not to move during formations, but internally. Something inside him is breaking. Not the same thing that's breaking in Markus, but something related. He's learning that hesitation leads to this. That 3 seconds of doubt equals this. That thinking, the simple human act of thinking, carries this price. And he's learning something the Imperium doesn't intend. He's learning that there's no safety, that you can do everything right and still end up on that table. That courage doesn't matter, that fighting doesn't matter, that survival is just a temporary condition revoked at bureaucratic whim. In future battles, Dinas will charge without hesitation. The lesson will work, but he'll also stop speaking. Stop writing letters. Stop maintaining his gear beyond the bare minimum. He'll become a perfect, obedient machine, executing orders with mechanical precision. Until one day, during a rare moment of quiet, he'll put his lasgun in his mouth and pull the trigger. The Imperium will classify this as combat stress casualty. They will not connect it to this moment, or if they do, they won't care. The lesson worked. He obeyed until he couldn't anymore. That's acceptable. Soldiers are cheaper than weapons. We're now at the technical midpoint of the procedure. Henna has worked her way through both hands, both forearms, and is beginning on the upper arms. Markus is no longer recognizable as human. His hands are skeletal nightmare things, bone and sinew and exposed tendon. His arms are raw. Blood soaks the table, drains into collection channels, is processed and sterilized for medical use elsewhere. The Imperium wastes nothing. But Markus is alive. That's the horrible miracle of Imperial medical technology. Henna monitors his vitals on a display: heart rate, blood pressure, brain activity. When any parameter drifts toward dangerous levels, she adjusts the chemical cocktail, keeping him conscious. She's remarkably good at this. Markus has never been in less danger of dying. Every system is monitored, every risk managed. If infection develops, antibiotics are administered. If blood loss becomes critical, synthetic plasma is transfused. If pain causes cardiac complications, sympathetic nervous system blockers are deployed. He will survive this. That's not mercy. That's the opposite of mercy. Because in 6 months, Imperial regenerative technology will graft vat-grown skin onto his exposed flesh. The skin won't be perfect. It'll be slightly different in color, texture, sensitivity. He'll look like a patchwork, like something assembled from parts, and then he'll be returned to active duty. This isn't execution. Execution would be kind. This is correction. The Imperium is teaching him a lesson, and the lesson requires that he survive to apply what he's learned. Henna makes a note on her data slate. Subject vitals stable, proceeding to thoracic region. Estimated time to completion, 2 hours, 15 minutes. Her handwriting is neat. Her tone is level. She's documenting this the way you might document an oil change. On the table, Markus makes a sound that might once have been a plea, but is now just wet noise from a throat that's been screaming for 4 hours straight. Henna adjusts his head restraint so he's more comfortable. She genuinely believes she's being compassionate. The procedure ends not with drama, but with paperwork. Henna completes the final section. Markus is back and steps away from the table. She removes her surgical gloves, soaked through with blood despite their thickness. She drops them into a disposal unit. She reviews her data slate one final time, signing off on each section. Upper extremities, complete. Lower extremities, complete. Thoracic region, complete. Dorsal region, complete. She skips the face and scalp. Those are reserved for extreme cases, and moves to post-procedure care. Synthetic skin grafts are applied as temporary coverage. They're not meant to be permanent, just enough to keep the raw flesh protected while vat-grown replacement skin is cultured from Markus's own cells. He's moved to a recovery bay. Restraints remain in place. Patients in the immediate post-procedure period often attempt self-harm, and that would waste resources. Sedatives are finally administered, not for kindness, for practicality. Screaming disturbs other patients. Markus sinks into unconsciousness, not sleep, something deeper and darker where even dreams can't reach him. In the observation gallery, the 200 witnesses are dismissed. They file out silently. No one speaks. Several are crying. Most are simply blank, their faces erased of expression. Corporal Dinas is among them. He walks in perfect formation, his back straight, his eyes forward. Inside, something fundamental has changed. He's learned the lesson. He will never hesitate again, not because he's brave, because he's broken. Medici specialist Henna writes her final report. Procedure completed without complication. Subject vital signs remain stable. Estimated recovery time, 6 months. Prognosis, full physical rehabilitation with acceptable functional capacity. Psychological evaluation pending. Recommend return to active duty following medical clearance. She saves the file. uploads it to the central medical database, requests assignment of her next case. She has 17 minutes before her next procedure begins. She uses it to pray. She's performed 48 judicial F-layings now. Each time she prays, not for the patients, they're receiving what the Imperium deems necessary. She prays for herself. She prays that she continues to serve the Emperor well. She prays that her hands remain steady. She prays that she never questions what she's doing because questioning leads to doubt and doubt leads to the table. She's seen it happen. A medici specialist who expressed reservations about judicial flaying, who suggested perhaps there were alternative disciplinary methods. They flayed him using his own instruments. They made his colleagues perform the procedure. The lesson was clear. You do your duty or you become part of the lesson. Henna's prayer ends. Her timer chimes, time for the next procedure. She washes her hands, dons fresh gloves, reviews the next file. The next subject is Trooper Markus, charged with nervous disorder bordering on cowardice after developing stress response flinching. Henna reads the charges, nods, signs the acknowledgement. Another correction, another lesson. Another night she'll pray and wonder. In the quiet spaces she doesn't let herself examine whether her hands remaining steady is a blessing or a curse. She doesn't let herself examine those spaces for long. That way lies doubt, and doubt leads to the table. 6 months pass. 6 months measured not in days or weeks, but in small eternities of pain that never quite ends. The vat-grown skin grafts. The nerve damage doesn't heal, can't heal, because some injuries go deeper than flesh. Trooper Markus Venn returns to active duty. You can see him now if you look closely. He's standing in formation during morning muster, his lasgun held at precisely the regulation angle, his gaze fixed forward at nothing. At first glance, he looks like any other guardsman, tired, grim, functional. Look closer. His skin is wrong. The vat-grown grafts are impressive. Imperial medical technology can perform miracles when motivated, but they're not perfect. The new skin is slightly paler than his original flesh, creating a patchwork effect across his arms, his chest, his back. In certain light, he looks like a mosaic, a person assembled from pieces. The texture is different too. Smoother in some places, rougher in others, and the nerve endings never quite reconnect properly. He feels phantom sensations constantly, burning where there's no fire, ice where there's no cold, touch where nothing exists. He takes medication for it. Anti-inflammatory compounds, neural blockers, pain suppressants. They help. They don't solve. Every night when he removes his uniform, he sees the evidence of his correction. Every morning when he dresses, he's reminded of what 3 seconds of hesitation cost him. The Imperium intends this. The scars, physical and psychological, are part of the lesson. But the most profound change isn't visible. Watch Markus during a combat deployment. The order comes. It doesn't matter what order, they're all the same to him now, and he executes it immediately. No pause, no thought. The order reaches his ears and his body is already moving. He's first over the trench wall, first into the kill zone, first through the wire. This isn't bravery. Bravery requires fear overcome by will. Markus doesn't feel fear anymore, or rather, he feels one fear so overwhelming that it drowns all others, the fear of hesitation. The enemy terrifies him less than the possibility of delaying an order by even a fraction of a second. Other soldiers notice. They notice that Markus charges when charging is suicide, that he volunteers for missions others refuse, that he never, ever questions or pauses or thinks. They avoid him. Not consciously, not with malice, but with the instinctive wariness humans feel around something that's broken in a way they don't understand. Markus doesn't eat with the other soldiers, doesn't participate in the quiet conversations that happen during rare moments of calm, doesn't maintain the small rituals that help men stay human in inhuman conditions. He exists in a state of perfect function and absolute isolation. At night, he doesn't sleep. Sleep means dreams, and dreams mean remembering the table. So he drinks when he can get alcohol, stolen, traded, distilled from the emperor knows what, and uses Obscura when he can afford it. The Obscura helps. For a few hours, the phantom pains stop. For a few hours, he doesn't see medici specialist Henna's calm, professional face every time he closes his eyes. For a few hours, he almost feels human again. Then the drug wears off and he's back in his body, his borrowed, patched, corrected body, and the memories return like a tide that never fully recedes. Markus isn't alone. The 117th Regiment has other survivors of judicial flaying. Not many, most soldiers avoid the table through either instant obedience or quick death, but enough that they form a kind of category. Let me show you 3 others. 3 different responses to the same trauma. 3 lessons the Imperium didn't intend but teaches regardless. She's 32, which makes her ancient by Guard standards. She's been serving for 8 years, survived that long through a combination of skill, luck, and careful compliance with regulations. Until the day she was ordered to execute a civilian. The civilian was a woman, maybe 60 years old, found hiding in the ruins during a compliance action. She was designated a potential hostile based on Imperial protocol. Anyone found in a combat zone is assumed to be enemy until proven otherwise. The order came down, firing squad. Yana was selected as part of the detail. She stood there, last gun aimed at an old woman whose only crime was surviving in the wrong place, and something in her refused. Not dramatically, not with defiance, she just couldn't. Her finger wouldn't pull the trigger. 3 seconds passed. The Commissar noticed. The old woman was executed by another soldier. Yana was sent to the Medici Bay. Now, 6 months later, she's transformed into something the other soldiers call the penitent. She volunteers for everything. Every dangerous patrol, every suicidal assault, every mission where the chances of survival approach 0. She's always first to raise her hand, first to step forward, first to charge into fire that should kill her but somehow doesn't. This looks like bravery. It's not. It's atonement. She's trying to die, but she's trying to die the right way, following orders, serving the Emperor, proving that her moment of weakness was an aberration. She's running from herself, and the race never ends. The other soldiers respect her in a distant way. She's racked up commendations. She saved lives through her fearless actions. But no one wants to be near her because everyone understands what she is. A woman trying to die with enough glory that it erases the shame of 3 seconds when she was human. She'll succeed eventually. Probability ensures it. Some mission will finally kill her. The Imperium will classify her death as heroic. They'll use her example to inspire others. They'll never acknowledge that they created her, that her courage is just trauma wearing a uniform. 15 years in the Guard. Sergeant at 28, decorated veteran respected by his men. He questioned an order, not dramatically, just asked for clarification in front of junior soldiers, and the Commissar decided an example was needed. After his flaying, after his reconstruction, after his return to duty, Sergeant Cole still serves. But he's not there. Between orders, he stands motionless, staring at nothing, unresponsive to questions, to stimuli, to anything except direct commands. Give him an order and he executes it perfectly, immediately, with mechanical precision. But the moment the order is complete, he stops, stands, waits for the next order like a machine in standby mode. He doesn't eat unless ordered to, doesn't sleep unless ordered to, doesn't perform basic maintenance on his equipment unless specifically instructed. Some part of his mind didn't survive the table, some essential component of consciousness, the part that generates initiative, that creates wants and needs and autonomous action, was simply erased. The Commissariat considers this a successful outcome, perfect obedience without the complication of personality. A soldier who will never question, never hesitate, never deviate from orders because there's nothing left inside him to generate doubt. The fact that he's essentially a servitor with biological components doesn't trouble them. Servitors are useful. Efficiency is prized. That it happened to a man with 15 years of service, with friendships and skills and a history, is irrelevant. He hesitated. He was corrected. The correction worked. End of assessment. 8 years ago, Vex was flayed for cowardice. He froze during an enemy assault, spent crucial seconds paralyzed by fear while his squad took casualties. He survived the correction, returned to duty, and something unexpected happened. He integrated it. Not healthily, nothing about this is healthy, but functionally. He took his trauma and weaponized it, turned his scars from shame into credentials. I learned, he tells new recruits, displaying his patchwork arms. I hesitated and the Emperor taught me. Now I serve better than I ever could have before. He's become an informal enforcer within the platoon. He watches for signs of hesitation, of doubt, of questions forming behind soldiers' eyes, and he reports them. To the sergeants, to the lieutenants, to the commissars. He genuinely believes he's helping. In his mind, he's saving soldiers from experiencing what he experienced. By reporting them early, before they hesitate in combat, before it becomes a capital offense, he's giving them a chance at lighter punishment. Flogging instead of flaying. Demotion instead of correction. The other soldiers hate him. They hate him with a cold, impotent fury that can never be expressed because expressing it would be insubordination. They see him as a traitor, a collaborator, worse than the commissars because at least the commissars are supposed to be the enemy. Vex doesn't understand their hatred. Or he does, and he's convinced himself it's misdirected. He's doing the Emperor's work. He's maintaining discipline. He's protecting them from themselves. The psychological gymnastics required to believe this, to transform being tortured into being enlightened, are breathtaking. But the human mind is capable of remarkable adaptations when the alternative is confronting unbearable truth. Vex will likely survive longer than most. He's useful to the commissariat. He's reliable. He's zealous. But he'll die alone, surrounded by people who despise him, never quite understanding why they don't appreciate his help. These three survivors and Markus, and dozens of others throughout the regiment, serve a purpose beyond their individual military contribution. They're living lessons. New recruits arrive, fresh from training, still carrying the delusion that courage and compliance will keep them safe. They see the survivors. They see the patchwork skin, the 1,000-meter stares, the bizarre behaviors, and they learn. Before battles, soldiers look at Markus, first over the wall, first to charge, running faster than thought, and they think, better to die fighting than live through correction. They look at Yana volunteering for suicide missions and think, she's trying to escape what they did to her. They look at Cole standing motionless between orders and think, that could be me. They look at Vex reporting his squadmates and think, some people break the wrong way. The lesson takes root, obey, instantly, completely, without thought. Because thinking leads to hesitation, and hesitation leads to the table, and what comes back from the table isn't really you anymore. This is intentional. The Imperium keeps survivors in service specifically for this purpose. They could be retired, assigned to non-combat roles, given medici positions. They're not. They're kept on the front lines, in plain view, walking advertisements for the consequences of doubt. The cruel irony. These survivors are often exemplary soldiers now. Markus charges when others hesitate. Yana volunteers when others refuse. Cole obeys perfectly. Vex maintains discipline. From a purely tactical standpoint, judicial flaying creates more effective soldiers. The fact that it destroys them as human beings is, from the Imperium's perspective, an acceptable trade. Humans are renewable. The Imperium processes billions of new recruits every year. Obedience is essential. Whatever creates it is justified. Return to Markus one final time in this section. He's received orders to report to Lord Commissar Roth's office. The walk there is measured in heartbeats that feel like hammer blows. Every step contains the memory of the last time he was singled out, the last time he stood before judgment. He arrives, salutes, stands at attention, eyes forward, while every nerve in his borrowed skin screams with phantom fire. Roth studies him for a long moment, then speaks. Trooper Venn, you've served well since your correction. Markus says nothing, hasn't been given permission to speak. Your example has prevented at least a dozen other cases of hesitation in your platoon. Soldiers see you, and they learn. The lesson you embody has saved lives and maintained discipline. Roth picks up something from his desk. A small metal object catches the light. For exemplary service following disciplinary correction, and for your contribution to regimental morale and discipline, You are hereby awarded the Medallion of Dutiful Service. He pins it to Markus's chest. The metal is cold against the patchwork skin. You may speak. Markus tries. His throat works. No sound emerges at first then. Thank you, Lord Commissar. The words are ash in his mouth. You're dismissed. Later, back in the barracks, Markus sits on his bunk. The metal is still pinned to his uniform. Other soldiers avoid looking at it, avoid looking at him. He stares at the small piece of metal, the Imperium's acknowledgement that his suffering has value, that he's not just surviving, he's serving. His pain has been productive. His trauma is an asset. He should feel something. Pride, maybe, or vindication, or at least the bitter satisfaction of recognition. He feels nothing. Nothing except the phantom pain of skin that's no longer his own, nerve endings that fire signals for touches that don't exist, cold that isn't there, burning in flesh that's been replaced. He unpins the metal, holds it in his reconstructed hand, stares at it. Somewhere in the distance, artillery thunders, always the artillery. The war never ends. Markus doesn't sleep that night. He never really sleeps anymore. He just exists, a perfect soldier, a broken man, a lesson given flesh, exactly what the Imperium intended. Let me shift your perspective one more time. You've seen the soldiers. You've seen what the system does to those who hesitate. Now I need you to understand something that might surprise you, something that makes the entire machinery of Imperial discipline even more horrifying. The enforcers are just as terrified as the enforced. Lord Commissar Victor Roth sits in his quarters and his hands are shaking, not visibly. He's trained for 30 years to control his physical responses, to project absolute certainty even when he feels none. But inside, in the private space between thought and action, he's shaking. On his desk sits a data slate. It's been sitting there for 3 hours. He's read the message 17 times, and reading it again won't change the words, but he reads it anyway. Lord Commissar Victor Roth, your presence is required at Sector Command. Report within 48 hours. Disciplinary review pending. Lord Commissar General Varak. Disciplinary review. Those 2 words contain entire universes of dread. The message arrived this morning, along with a statistical report. The report shows execution rates for his sector over the past year. 47 judicial efflayings, down from 63 the previous year. 18% decrease. The report doesn't mention that Roth has had 18% fewer genuine cases requiring that level of correction. It doesn't note that his sector has actually maintained better overall discipline through a combination of lesser punishments and preventive measures. Statistics don't care about context, they care about numbers, and the numbers suggest he's going soft. In the commissariat, soft is a death sentence. Literally. Roth pours himself amasic. It's 900 hours, far too early for drinking, but he's alone in his quarters, and what he's about to remember requires something to dull the edges. Let me take you back 3 years. Let me show you what happens when a commissar fails. Commissar August Thane was Roth's mentor. More than that, he was Roth's model for what a commissar should be. 30 years of service, decorated, respected. A true believer who nonetheless maintained a core of something that might, in another universe, be called wisdom. Thane understood that the commissariat's purpose wasn't cruelty, it was functionality. That discipline served a purpose, and excessive discipline could be as destructive as insufficient discipline. He was good at his job. His regiments showed excellent cohesion, low corruption rates, acceptable casualty ratios. And then came the incident on Tertium VII. The order came down from high command: execute a platoon. 37 soldiers who had retreated from an untenable position. The position, a forward observation post on an exposed ridge, had come under sustained artillery fire. The sergeant in charge, a veteran named Corvus, had made a tactical decision: withdraw to secondary positions, preserve his men, maintain operational capacity. It was textbook tactical doctrine, exactly what the sergeant should have done. But high command had classified the ridge as strategically essential, which meant it was to be held regardless of cost, regardless of tactical sense, regardless of the fact that holding it achieved nothing except maintaining a point on a map. The retreat was classified as cowardice. The entire platoon was sentenced to death. Commissar Thane received the order, read it, studied the tactical situation, and did something that in retrospect was suicide. He questioned it, not publicly, not dramatically. He followed proper protocol. He submitted a formal request for review, including detailed tactical analysis showing that Sergeant Corvus had made the correct decision, that the platoon had preserved Imperial resources and maintained combat effectiveness. He requested a 48-hour delay on the executions while the review was processed. His request was acknowledged, filed, and denied within 6 hours. The response was brief. Orders stand. Execute immediately. Thane delayed anyway. Spent another day compiling additional evidence, testimonials from other officers, statistical analysis showing that tactical withdrawals in similar situations resulted in better overall outcomes. He submitted the supplementary report. It was rejected. He was given a direct order: execute the platoon within 12 hours or face charges yourself. Thane stood in his quarters not unlike the ones Roth occupies now, and faced a choice. Execute 37 men for following correct tactical doctrine, or refuse an order and face the consequences. He chose principle over pragmatism. He refused. Commissar August Thane's trial lasted 15 minutes. Not because the evidence was clear, though it was, but because the verdict was predetermined. The moment he refused an order, his fate was sealed. The trial was theater, a ritual demonstration of the system's power. The charges: failure to maintain discipline, disobedience of direct orders, conduct unbecoming a commissar, mercy in the face of heresy. That last one is particular to the commissariat. Mercy is not a virtue, it's a crime. Thane attempted to present his defense. He was allowed to speak for 90 seconds before the presiding commissar general cut him off. Your reasoning is irrelevant. Your analysis is irrelevant. You were given an order. You disobeyed. That is all this tribunal needs to establish. The sentence was delivered without pause, public flaying, followed by servitor conversion, but not standard judicial flaying. Commissars who fail don't receive the measured medical procedure that Markus Venn endured. They receive enhanced correction, punishment designed to deter others in the commissariat from ever considering mercy. Every commissar in the sector was required to attend. 243 commissars assembled in a parade ground, standing in perfect formation while one of their own was destroyed. Roth was in the front row, position of honor or punishment, he never determined which. They brought Thane out in restraints. He didn't struggle, didn't plead, maintained his dignity right up until the moment it was torn from him. The flaying was performed by a junior commissar named Halleck. He'd been Thane's student. The irony making the student flay the teacher was intentional. No Medicae Bay, no anesthetics, no stimulants to prevent shock, no antiseptics to prevent infection, just chains, knives, and 12 hours. I won't describe it in detail. You've already witnessed what Medicae-supervised flaying entails. Now imagine that without any of the medical safeguards, performed in the open air in front of hundreds, by someone who's never done it before and is shaking so badly he can barely hold the blade. Imagine it taking 12 hours because the torturer is incompetent, because mistakes are made, because there's no precision or efficiency, just pain extending into infinity. Thane remained conscious for 9 of those hours. The sounds he made changed over time, started as screams, became pleas, devolved into animal sounds, finally faded to wet breathing that didn't sound like it should come from anything living. Roth stood at attention the entire time, didn't move, didn't look away, watched every moment because looking away would be noted, and being noted could lead to your own judgment. He vomited twice. Both times he vomited straight down, didn't break formation, remained standing. Other commissars did the same. The front row stood in pools of their own sick, maintaining discipline while watching discipline devour one of their own. When it ended, when Thane finally stopped breathing, they didn't dispose of the body. They took him to the tech priests, performed servitor conversion. Servitors are lobotomized cyborgs, their higher brain functions removed, reduced to biological machines. They're used throughout the Imperium for menial labor, carrying equipment, performing repetitive tasks, serving as living tools. Thane's conversion was specialized. Enough of his consciousness was preserved that recognition remains in his one remaining biological eye. Enough to know what he's become, not enough to speak, to resist, to do anything except serve. His function: he carries equipment for the Commissar who replaced him. Present day. 3 years later, Commissar Thane Unit 774, his official designation, shambles through the commissariat compound, performing its assigned duties. It's barely recognizable as the man it used to be. Most of the original body has been replaced with augmetics, crude, functional, designed for load-bearing rather than aesthetics. Thane's skull is partially visible through gaps in the metal plating. His remaining eye stares out from a face that's more machine than meat. But the eye is functional, and sometimes, when certain stimuli are present, you can see recognition flicker behind it. Roth sees the servitor weekly. Sometimes more often, depending on administrative schedules. Each time it's a reminder. Last week, Roth was supervising a flogging. Standard discipline: a soldier had failed equipment inspection 3 times. 50 lashes, enough to teach without crippling. The servitor was present, carrying the medici supplies for post-punishment treatment. When the flogger retrieved the whip, the servitor trembled. Not much, just a faint vibration in its augmetic limbs. The kind of physical response that might be a glitch in the servitor's motor systems. Except it wasn't a glitch. Somewhere in the ruined meat that used to be Commissar August Thane, enough consciousness remains to remember, to feel, to experience fear. It can't speak. Its vocal cords were removed during conversion. Can't act. Its higher motor functions are slave to its programming. Can't even die. Servitors are maintained indefinitely, their biological components kept alive through chemical and mechanical means. It just exists. A warning, a lesson, a horror made permanent. Roth sees it and remembers this is what mercy costs. Return to Roth's quarters, to the data slate, to the shaking hands he won't let anyone see. He has 48 hours to report to Sector Command. 48 hours to prepare a defense for why his execution rates have declined. He reviews his options. Option 1. Present the truth. Explain that he's maintained discipline effectively through preventive measures, that fewer executions doesn't mean insufficient discipline, that his sector's overall performance metrics are excellent. He knows how this ends. Explanations sound like excuses. Excuses sound like weakness. Weakness leads to correction. He's seen that path. It's wearing an augmetic chassis and carrying his equipment. Option 2, escalate enforcement. Start finding reasons to order more corrections. Turn minor infractions into capital offenses. Meet the quota through sheer brutality. This is survival. This is pragmatism. This is what the system rewards. He pulls up personnel files. Scrolls through disciplinary records, looks for candidates. The names blur together. Each one is a human being. Each one has a story, a history, people who might mourn them. He stops himself from thinking that way. Those thoughts lead nowhere good. He needs to find cases he can escalate. Minor infractions he can reclassify as serious offenses. Potential hesitation he can preemptively punish. One file catches his attention. Trooper Demaz. Service record adequate. Recent notations. Develops visible stress response to sudden loud noises. Flinches. Requires multiple seconds to regain composure. Demaz. Roth remembers him. He was the one watching when Markus Venn was flayed. Stood in the observation gallery for 6 hours, witnessed every moment. Of course he flinches at loud noises. Of course he has stress responses. The man watched his squadmate be systematically destroyed. That kind of trauma doesn't heal cleanly. In any reasonable system, Demaz would receive psychological support, treatment, time to process. In the Imperium, he's developing a nervous disorder bordering on cowardice. Roth reads the notation again. His hand hovers over the classification buttons. Minor infraction requires monitoring. Major infraction requires punishment. Capital offense requires correction. He knows Demaz is a good soldier. He's seen the man's record. Consistent, reliable, no previous incidents. He knows this is unjust. That flinching at sounds after watching a judicial flaying is normal human response, not cowardice. He knows that ordering Demaz's flaying would be wrong. He also knows that refusing to order it might put him on the path to servitor conversion. Let me slow down time for you. Let me take you inside Roth's mind during the 30 seconds where he makes his decision. This is wrong. Demaz doesn't deserve this. I have the authority to classify this as minor. I can protect him, but protecting Demaz doesn't protect Roth. And if Roth is removed, flayed, converted, destroyed, someone worse replaces him. Someone who won't even pause to consider mercy. If I fall, how many others fall harder? How many soldiers will face worse commissars? Perhaps maintaining my position, even if it requires sacrificing Demaz, serves the greater good. The logic is sound, also convenient. Funny how utilitarian arguments always seem to justify survival. The truth is simpler and more terrible than philosophy. He's afraid. He's not afraid of death. Every commissar accepts mortality. He's afraid of the table, of the 12 hours, of ending up as a servitor, conscious but helpless, carrying equipment for eternity, while some fragment of himself screams inside a prison of meat and metal. He's afraid, and his fear makes him do what he's trained soldiers to do without thinking. Obey. Roth's finger moves, classifies the infraction as capital offense, approves correction through judicial flaying. The system processes the order, generates the documentation, schedules the procedure. Trooper Demaz will report to Medici Bay 7 Theta in 6 hours. Medici Specialist Henna will perform the procedure, her 49th. 200 soldiers will be required to watch. The lesson will be taught again. Roth closes the data slate, pours another amazek. His hands are still shaking, but he's alone, so it doesn't matter. He thinks about Thane, about principle and pragmatism, about the moment his mentor chose righteousness and received horror. He thinks about Demaz, who will scream for 6 hours because a good man was too afraid to do the right thing. He thinks about the servitor that used to be Commissar August Thane, shambling through the compound carrying equipment, trembling at the sound of whips. He thinks, I'm becoming what I feared, what I swore I wouldn't become. He thinks, but I'll survive. He thinks, is that enough? He has no answer. Or rather, he has an answer but can't let himself examine it too closely. Because examining it means confronting the truth, that the system doesn't create evil men. It creates terrified men who do evil things to avoid becoming victims themselves. That every commissar is both judge and potential defendant. That mercy is punished more harshly than cruelty. That the machine perpetuates itself by making everyone complicit, everyone terrified, everyone willing to feed others into the gears to avoid being fed in themselves. Lord Commissar Roth finishes his drink, stands, straightens his uniform, walks to his desk and begins preparing his report for sector command. He'll show increased enforcement. He'll demonstrate renewed commitment to discipline. He'll survive the review, and in doing so, he'll ensure the system continues exactly as it is. At his desk, writing justifications for orders he knows are unjust, his hand moves with practiced efficiency. The letters form words. The words form sentences. The sentences form a defense built on the bones of men like Demaz. Outside, artillery thunders. The war continues. Inside, a different war rages, quieter, more personal, fought in the space between conscience and survival. Roth is winning this war. The victory tastes like ash and amasek and the slow death of everything he once believed he stood for. But he's winning. And in the Imperium, that's all that matters. There's one more truth, one final horror that completes the picture. You've seen the punishment. You've seen the survivors. You've seen the enforcers trapped in their own fear. Now I need to show you where it all goes. Because in the Imperium of man, nothing is wasted. Every resource is cataloged, processed, distributed. Every asset is utilized until it physically cannot function, and then its components are reclaimed and used again. This applies to tanks, to ammunition, to weapons, and to human flesh. His name is Johann Vess, and he's about to make a fatal mistake. The mistake is simple: he's going to become curious. Vess works for the Administratum, the vast bureaucratic machine that keeps the Imperium functioning. Specifically, he's a supply distribution clerk, subsector medical, assigned to tracking shipments of medical materials. It's mind-numbing work. Every day, thousands of manifests cross his desk. Each one lists materials, quantities, origins, destinations. He reviews them, checks them against inventory databases, approves or denies based on allocation protocols, and moves to the next. He's been doing this for 7 years. 7 years of numbers and codes and requisition forms. 7 years of never thinking about what the numbers represent. Until today. The manifest appears like any other. Johann scans it with eyes that have learned to process information without really seeing it. Shipment ID: 7749 Medical Gamma Origin, Tertium VII Medici Complex 12 Contents, Organic Material Grade 7 Human Disciplinary Origin Quantity, 847 square meters Destination, Multiple C Attached Distribution Schedule. He almost approves it automatically. His finger hovers over the authorization key. Then some small glitch in his trained numbness makes him pause. 847 square meters of human skin, disciplinary origin. He shouldn't question it. His job is to process, not to analyze. The Administratum values efficiency, not curiosity, but the number bothers him. It's large enough to represent. What, dozens of people, hundreds? He tells himself he's just checking for data entry errors, making sure the quantity is correct, being thorough. He accesses the restricted files. This is his first mistake. The files are extensive. Johann expected a simple inventory breakdown. Instead, he finds a complete industrial system, documented with the kind of obsessive detail only the Administratum can achieve. Categories, processing protocols, quality grades, distribution networks, and suddenly the abstract numbers become concrete. 847 square meters of human skin represents approximately 412 individuals, processed following judicial correction. He sits back from his desk, stares at the number, 412 people, their skin removed, processed, and now being shipped to various destinations across the subsector. For what? He shouldn't dig deeper. He's already accessed restricted information. Going further compounds the violation. He goes further. This is his second mistake. The highest quality skin, specifically skin from young, healthy individuals with minimal scarring, is treated through a specialized process developed over millennia. The skin is cleaned, stretched, treated with chemical compounds that prevent decay. Then it's dried, pressed, and cut to standard dimensions. The result: parchment, writing material. Johann reads the distribution logs. 40% to commissariat facilities, personal diaries, execution records, disciplinary logs. 30% to ecclesiarchy facilities, prayer books, devotional texts, holy writs. 20% to administratum offices, important documents, official decrees, permanent records. 10% to military command, maps, tactical documents, commendations. He scrolls through specific examples. Commissariat Directive 774, personal diary binding. Origin, subject 1147, Trooper M. Venn, age 19. Quality, excellent. Allocated to Lord Commissar V. Roth, personal use. The document includes a note. Tradition, commissars utilize skin from their first judicial oversight, symbolizes commitment to duty. Johann stares at this entry. Lord Commissar Roth writes in a diary bound in the skin of the first person he had tortured to death. This isn't cruelty, it's tradition. He continues reading. Every commissar carries one. The diary is part of their kit, as essential as their bolt pistol. They write in it nightly, documenting executions, recording observations, maintaining personal accountability, and they write on the preserved flesh of someone whose crime was being human at the wrong moment. The irony is documented right there in the files. Imperial orders commanding executions are written on parchment made from those executed for disobeying imperial orders. The system literally writes its commands on the flesh of those who failed to obey. Johann feels something cold spreading through his chest. Not shock, shock is too clean. This is something slower. The feeling of understanding something you wish you didn't. He keeps reading. Lower quality skin, scarred, older, from less healthy subjects, is processed for medical use. The process is similar to parchment preparation, but the end result is different. Medical grafts for burn victims and wounded soldiers. The distribution is carefully managed. Skin from subjects convicted of cowardice is preferentially used for soldiers wounded in combat. A soldier who hesitated in battle might have their skin grafted onto a soldier burned defending their post. Johann finds a case study, included as an example of efficient resource allocation. Subject A. Trooper J. Halleck, convicted of cowardice, processed following correction. Skin allocated to medical facility. 47% grafted onto 7 wounded soldiers from the same regiment. Note: psychological impact on recipients minimal. Recommendation: continue practice. The note continues. One recipient experienced distress upon learning the origin of their grafts. Distress classified as doubting imperial efficiency. Subject received counseling and additional loyalty conditioning. Issue resolved. You could be wearing the skin of a coward right now, grafted onto your burns, helping you heal, and you might never know. Or you might find out and your distress would be classified as a problem requiring correction. Mid-grade skin is processed for non-medical applications. Regimental banners, commissariat regalia, ceremonial drums, officers' equipment, belt leather. Gloves, binding for official standards. Johann finds documentation of specific examples. The 19th Cadian Regiment, standard company colors, processed from 30 subjects convicted of refusing combat orders during the assault on Mordian Hive. Subjects executed for cowardice. Skin processed and assembled into regimental banner. Banner flew during subsequent successful assault. Morale impact: positive. Survivors of refused assault reported increased motivation. Standard continues in active use. The banner flies above the regiment as eternal shame. The men who refused to charge, who knew the charge was suicide and said so, now exist as a flag carried into battle by men who learned to never question orders. There are hundreds of such banners, thousands. Throughout the Imperium, regiments carry standards made from the flesh of those who hesitated, who questioned, who thought. Johann finds another entry. Commissariat ceremonial drums. Drumheads processed from grade 5-7 skin. Drums used during official executions and disciplinary ceremonies. Note: the sound quality of human skin drumheads is superior to synthetic alternatives. Tradition maintains this practice. They beat drums to announce executions. The drums are made from people who were executed. The symbolism isn't accidental, it's intentional. Johann reaches the final category, the one that makes everything else seem almost merciful by comparison. Premium skin, the absolute highest quality from young subjects with no imperfections, is shipped to ecclesiarchy facilities. Purpose: binding for holy texts. The theological justification is documented in detail. Through suffering, flesh is purified. Through punishment, the spirit is redeemed from error. Therefore, the skin of the corrected is rendered sacred, transformed from vessel of doubt to testament of faith. To bind holy words in such material is to honor the Emperor's mercy, which offers redemption even to the fallen. Translation: when you're flayed for hesitation, your skin becomes holy. The Imperium's most sacred prayer books, the texts kissed by the faithful, carried into battle by ecclesiarchy priests, displayed in cathedrals as objects of veneration, are bound in human leather. When a soldier kisses the sacred texts before battle, they might be kissing the preserved agony of someone who was tortured to death for questioning an order. The priests who carry these texts don't know, or they know and consider it appropriate. The suffering of the corrected, transformed into instruments of faith. Johann sits in his small office, surrounded by data slates and manifests, and the cold feeling in his chest has spread through his entire body. He's discovered an industrial system, a supply chain, an economy built on human suffering. And it's not hidden, it's not secret, it's just boring, administrative, the kind of information buried in restricted files not because it's scandalous, but because it's logistically complex and irrelevant to most personnel. Johann accesses broader statistics. The numbers are numbing. Across the Imperium, an estimated 27 million square kilometers of human skin are processed annually through this system. That's not a typo. Million. The number is so large it stops meaning anything. But Johann tries to understand it anyway. 27 million square kilometers equals approximately 3 billion individuals processed per year. The number can't be right. It can't. Johann checks his math, checks the databases, runs the calculations again. The number holds. 3 billion people flayed, processed, distributed as raw material annually. That's the equivalent of the entire population of a major hive world, every year, turned into parchment and graphs and banners and sacred texts. He finds departmental documentation, entire sections of the administratum dedicated to this supply chain. Processing facilities, quality control, distribution logistics, inventory management. There are performance reviews, efficiency metrics, quarterly reports discussing yield optimization and quality improvement initiatives. One report discusses a new processing technique that reduces waste by 12%, allowing more usable material per subject. The technique is being rolled out across multiple sectors. The administrator who developed it received a commendation. Another report discusses demand forecasting. Increased military operations in segmentum obscurus expected to require 15% increase in parchment production. Recommend corresponding increase in disciplinary enforcement to meet demand. Human suffering has become a commodity, with supply chains, with forecasting models, with quarterly targets. Regiments that produce more disciplinary actions receive better supply allocations. Commissars are rated partially on their resource generation. The system creates economic incentives for brutality. Johann finds meeting minutes, administratum officials discussing skin yields like agricultural output. Subsector 7 is underperforming. Current yield, 87,000 square meters annually. Expected yield based on population, 120,000 square meters. Recommend inquiry into local commissariat enforcement standards. Action item. Send memo to Sector Commissar General requesting increased disciplinary rigor. Justify based on supply shortfalls. Follow-up. Sector Commissar General has acknowledged memo. Enforcement standards under review. Projected yield increase, 25% within 6 months. The next quarter's report shows the yield increase was achieved. 25% more people flayed, because the parchment supplies were running low. Johann should stop reading, should close the files, approve the manifest, move on with his day. He's horrified, yes, but he's functioned in the Imperium long enough to know that horror is baseline, that terrible things happen at scales impossible to affect, that the only rational response is to do your job and avoid thinking too hard about what your job supports. But something in him refuses to let it go. Some stubborn spark of humanity that insists this matters, that someone should know, that silence is complicity. He copies the files, sends them to his personal data slate, tells himself he just wants to review them later to understand them better. Then he makes the fatal error. He tells a colleague, her name is Scylla, she works in the adjacent office. They share recaf breaks sometimes, exchange small complaints about bureaucracy, maintain the kind of casual acquaintanceship that makes administrative work slightly less soul-crushing. During their break, Johan mentions what he's found, not dramatically, just quietly. Did you know what happens to the skin from judicial corrections? Scylla looks at him, the skin. It's processed, turned into parchment, medical grafts, other things. There's an entire industrial system. Of course there is, Scylla says. The Imperium wastes nothing. But the scale, the numbers, do you understand how many people? Stop, Scylla's voice is sharp. Don't, whatever you're thinking, don't. I'm not thinking anything, I'm just saying. You're questioning Imperial efficiency. That's what you're doing. You're suggesting that established processes are problematic. That's doubt, Johan. And doubt is. She doesn't finish the sentence. Doesn't need to. Doubt is heresy. Scylla reports him within an hour. She doesn't want to. She likes Johan. But she likes her own skin more. And silence, knowing what he's discovered and not reporting it, makes her complicit. The Imperium teaches its citizens well. Protect yourself by exposing others. The Adeptus Arbites arrive at Johan's office 6 days later. They're not subtle. 4 enforcers in carapace armor, carrying shock mauls and suppression shields. They arrest him in front of his colleagues, who watch with carefully neutral expressions. The charges are read in the holding cell. Johan Vess, you are charged with unauthorized access to restricted administratum data. You are charged with distribution of sensitive information. You are charged with spreading doubt in Imperial efficiency. How do you plead? Johan tries to explain. He was just doing his job, just checking data integrity. He didn't mean to. How do you plead? Not guilty, I was just. The arbiter makes a notation. The presumption of innocence doesn't exist in Imperial justice. The question isn't whether you did it. They know you did it or you wouldn't be charged. The question is whether you'll confess and make the paperwork easier. Johan doesn't confess. This is noted as uncooperative attitude. The trial lasts 20 minutes. The verdict is predetermined. The sentence is standard for information offenses combined with doubt spreading. Public flaying followed by processing. The irony is beautiful in its horror. He will become part of the system he exposed. Medici Bay 7 Theta. Medici specialist Henna has been transferred to this facility. She doesn't question the transfer. The administratum moves personnel constantly. Her 49th procedure is scheduled for today. Subject Johan Vess, administratum clerk, convicted of information crimes and doubt spreading. She reviews his file. Age 31. Healthy. Excellent skin quality. He spent his life in climate-controlled offices, no sun damage, no combat scars. She makes a note. Subject suitable for Grade 1 processing. Recommend allocation for high-priority applications. Translation: his skin is good enough for sacred texts. Johan is brought in, restrained, he's shaking. Henna performs her standard pre-procedure checks, explains what will happen. Her voice is calm, professional. This will be difficult, she says, but the Emperor protects. Your suffering serves the Imperium, remember that. Johan tries to speak. His voice breaks. I was just. The numbers were so large, I just wanted someone to know. Henna doesn't respond. She's heard similar statements before. They don't change anything. She prepares her instruments. In the observation gallery, 200 administratum clerks stand watching. Mandatory attendance. The lesson isn't just for military personnel, it's for everyone. Every clerk there is thinking the same thing. Don't be curious. Don't question. Don't look too closely at what the numbers mean. The lesson will work. It always works. Johan's last coherent thought, before Henna makes the first cut, is this. My skin will become a page in someone's ledger. I'll be classified, cataloged, distributed. I'll never stop serving the Imperium, even after I stop existing. The system I exposed will consume me, process me, and use me to perpetuate itself. Nothing is wasted, not even screaming. Henna's scalpel descends. Johan screams. The sound echoes through the Medici Bay, through the ventilation systems, mixing with the distant thunder of artillery and the hum of machinery. Another scream, another subject, another correction. The sound blends into ambient noise, one more voice in an endless chorus of agony that powers the Imperium's bureaucracy. Somewhere an administratum official updates the quarterly yield projections. The numbers look good. Efficiency is maintained. The machine continues. 6 months later, Lord Commissar Victor Roth receives a new diary. His old one is full, every page covered in his neat handwriting, documenting executions and corrections and the daily maintenance of discipline. The new diary is beautiful, premium binding, excellent quality leather, soft and supple with a faint grain pattern that catches the light. He opens it. The first page is blank, waiting for his first entry. He doesn't know, will never know, that the binding came from a clerk who died for the sin of curiosity. He writes, Day 1, New Diary. May it serve the Emperor as faithfully as the last. His handwriting is steady. Outside, the war continues. The screaming continues. The system continues. Nothing is wasted. Pull back now. Pull your perspective away from the individuals, away from the specific horrors, away from the Medici Bays and the screaming and the endless grinding of flesh into purpose. Let me show you the numbers. The cold, statistical reality that the Imperium analyzes, documents, and uses to justify every atrocity. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. It works. The Departamento Militarum maintains exhaustive records on everything. Troop movements, casualty rates, ammunition expenditure, and, relevant to our discussion, disciplinary effectiveness. The data is clear. Regiments with active judicial flaying programs show 34% faster response time to combat orders, 28% fewer instances of mass panic during enemy assault, 47% higher willingness to execute orders classified as high casualty probability. From a purely tactical standpoint, systematic terror works exactly as intended. Soldiers who have witnessed judicial flaying obey instantly. They charge into certain death without hesitation. They execute orders that any rational analysis would identify as suicide. The lesson takes root. Better to die following orders than survive long enough to face correction. But let me show you the hidden costs. The statistics the Imperium collects, but doesn't prominently display. Those same regiments show 156% higher rates of combat stimulant addiction, 89% higher rates of friendly fire incidents, soldiers too terrified to assess targets, firing at anything that moves, 203% higher rates of suicide during non-combat periods, 67% higher rates of psychological breakdown, requiring full sedation. The soldiers become weapons, perfect, obedient, effective weapons, but they stop being people. Their functionality has an expiration date. They burn out, they break, they self-destruct. Is that an acceptable trade? The Imperium's answer is immediate: yes, people are renewable. The Imperium processes billions of new recruits every year, drawn from hive worlds and agricultural planets and penal colonies across 1 million worlds. Individual humans are the cheapest resource the Imperium possesses. Weapons, equipment, ammunition, those require manufacturing, logistics, transportation. Those are expensive. But people replace themselves. They reproduce. They grow without imperial investment until they're old enough to be conscripted. From a resource management perspective, burning through human lives is more efficient than preserving them. Let me give you a specific example. The Mordian 17th Regiment implemented an aggressive judicial flaying program in 937. M41. Disciplinary corrections increased by 340%. Soldiers who witnessed corrections showed immediate and sustained improvement in obedience metrics. Over the next 2 years, the Mordian 17th achieved a 47% higher mission success rate than comparable regiments. They also experienced 89% higher casualty rates, primarily from soldiers charging into untenable positions without assessing tactical viability. After 3 years, the regiment was functionally destroyed, not by the enemy, but by their own effectiveness. They'd obeyed themselves to death. The Imperium's assessment, excellent performance, recommends similar protocols for future deployments. The regiment was reconstituted with fresh recruits. The program continued. The fact that the original soldiers were gone, dead or broken or used up completely, didn't matter. Mission success is what mattered, and missions succeeded. So here's where we arrive at the heart of it, the question that should keep you awake at night. In a universe where hesitation can literally doom worlds, where chaos corrupts through doubt, where trillions of enemies want humanity extinct, where a single moment of questioning can open the door to horrors that will consume entire planets, can we judge the Imperium's methods? Consider the utilitarian argument. If systematic brutalization of soldiers prevents chaos corruption, is it justified? If making men fear their commissars more than death keeps armies cohesive, is it necessary? If processing human beings as raw materials maintains the supply chains that keep humanity alive for one more day, is it more? The Imperium would answer yes to all of these. Not because they're evil, though they are evil by any reasonable standard, but because they genuinely believe the alternative is extinction. And they might be right. In the Warhammer 40,000 universe, chaos is real. It's not metaphorical. It's not symbolic. There are literal hellish entities that feed on doubt, that corrupt through questioning, that exploit any crack in certainty. The Imperium has case studies, documented examples. A commander questions his orders, reasonably, rationally, and 6 months later he's sacrificing his own men to the dark gods because the whispers that entered through that initial doubt have grown into screaming commands he can't resist. This has happened, hundreds of times, thousands. The archives of the Inquisition contain detailed documentation of exactly this progression. Doubt, right arrow question, right arrow corruption, right arrow damnation. So the Imperium's solution: eliminate thought at the tactical level, condition instant obedience, make the price of doubt so terrible that it overrides any temptation to question, is, within their universe's rules, logical. Perhaps the Imperium is monstrous because the universe forces it to be. Perhaps they're doing what must be done. Perhaps survival in a hostile universe requires becoming the monster that at least keeps humanity alive. But here's the counterargument. What is humanity preserving if it destroys everything that makes humans worth saving? If survival requires becoming monsters, have we actually survived, or just changed what kills us? The Imperium fights to preserve humanity, but it preserves nothing human. Every value that might make human civilization worth maintaining, compassion, mercy, the belief that individual lives have intrinsic value, is systematically eliminated. What's left is just meat, following orders, grinding itself into the machinery of eternal war. Is that humanity? Or is it something else wearing humanity's corpse? Perhaps the greatest tragedy of Warhammer 40,000 isn't that humanity might fall. It's that humanity fell 10,000 years ago when the Emperor ascended his throne and the Imperium began its transformation from empire into machine. It's that humanity is already dead. We're just watching the corpse twitch. Let me show you where our characters ended up. Brief epilogues. Small windows into lives that stopped mattering to anyone but themselves. 3 years post-flaying, he's still serving, still charging first, still volunteering for missions others refuse. He's been wounded twice more. Once, severely enough that most soldiers would have been retired to support roles. He was patched up and returned to frontline duty within a month. He's earned commendations, 3 of them. Medals pinned to his uniform during brief ceremonies where officers spoke words he didn't hear about valor he doesn't feel. He doesn't read the commendations, doesn't display the medals. When he's alone, he unpins them and leaves them in his footlocker. He exists in a state of perfect function and absolute emptiness. He writes no letters, maintains no friendships. participates in no rituals that might acknowledge shared humanity. He'll die in battle eventually, probably soon, given his volunteer rate for dangerous missions. When he dies, the Imperium will classify it as heroic. He'll classify it as finally transferred again. New sector, new facility, same procedures. She's performed 89 judicial F-layings now. She's become more efficient, can complete the standard procedure in 4 or 5 hours down from the 6 hours it took when she started. She still prays, every night. Sometimes during procedures when subjects are unconscious or too far gone to notice. She still believes she serves the Emperor, still believes her work is necessary. Her hands no longer shake. They never shake. Perfect steadiness, perfect precision. She no longer has nightmares, hasn't for 3 years. She's not sure if that's a good thing. Sometimes, in moments she doesn't let herself examine too closely, she wonders if the absence of nightmares means something in her has broken. But examining those moments leads to doubt. So she doesn't examine them. She performs her procedures, says her prayers, sleeps dreamlessly, and wonders in spaces between thoughts whether being able to do this without flinching makes her strong or damned. She never pursues that question far enough to find an answer. Promoted, Commissar General now, overseeing an entire sector's disciplinary operations. His review went well. The increased enforcement showed results. The numbers satisfied his superiors. He drinks more now. Amasic at breakfast is routine. Amasic at lunch is common. Amasic until unconsciousness is frequent. He writes less in his diary. The entries have become sparse, perfunctory. Day 2847. Executions 17. F-layings 4. Discipline maintained. No reflection, no detail, just numbers. His hands shake now, noticeably. He hides it as best he can, but it's getting worse. When he signs execution orders, sometimes he has to steady his right hand with his left. He knows that if anyone notices, if the shaking is interpreted as doubt, as weakness, he'll join Thane. The servitor that used to be Commissar August Thane still functions, carrying equipment somewhere in the sector. Roth hasn't seen it in months, prefers not to. Some reminders are too heavy to bear. Roth continues signing orders, continues maintaining discipline, continues drinking. He's become exactly what he feared, a man who does evil efficiently without pause because pausing means becoming the victim instead of the perpetrator. He knows this, acknowledges it in the hours between midnight and dawn when the amasic wears off enough that thoughts intrude. Then morning comes. He pours another drink, begins reviewing disciplinary reports. The system continues. He continues, because what else is there? His skin was processed, catalogued, distributed according to standard protocols. 47% became parchment, currently used in commissariat offices across 3 subsectors. Orders are written on it, executions documented on it. It serves efficiently. 31% became medical grafts. 37 wounded soldiers received grafts from his processed skin. They're healing well. None know the origin. 22% became decorative materials. His skin is now part of an administratum ceremonial banner carried during official functions. The banner is quite beautiful. Johann Vess is everywhere and nowhere, distributed across a subsector, serving in 1,000 small ways. The Imperium wastes nothing, not even the clerk who died for noticing. Pull back one final time. Look at the galactic scale. Right now at this moment across the Imperium. An estimated 10,000 plus judicial F-layings are in progress. That number is routine, daily, unremarkable. The screaming never stops. It just moves around the galaxy. A constant background radiation of agony that powers the Imperium's discipline system. In Medici Bays on 1,000,000 worlds, the lesson is being taught. The correction is being administered. The system is maintaining itself. This isn't an aberration in imperial justice. It's the foundation. Every single aspect of the Imperium functions this way: brutal efficiency, human cost externalized, suffering systematized. The judicial flaying is just one example, one small, specific example of how the Imperium processes humanity as raw material. There's a factory on Mars that produces ammunition. It employs 700,000 workers. The workers are technically volunteers, but volunteer means they weren't executed for crimes and were given the choice between the factory and death. They work 16-hour shifts. They sleep in their workstations. They die at an average age of 37, their lungs destroyed by industrial chemicals, their bodies worn to nothing by endless labor. When they die, their bodies are processed, rendered down. The organic compounds are used in fertilizer for agricultural worlds. The minerals are reclaimed for industrial use. Nothing is wasted. That factory produces 0.3% of the Imperium's ammunition. There are thousands of such factories. There's a hive world called Tertium that produces soldiers. Not trains them, produces them. The entire world is a breeding facility. Citizens are assigned reproductive quotas. Children are raised in communal facilities, educated in basic literacy and imperial doctrine, and conscripted at age 16. The world produces 500 million soldiers annually. Most die within 2 years of deployment. The world has been operating this way for 6,000 years. The math is simple and horrifying. That single world has produced 3 trillion soldiers who died in imperial service. 3 trillion individuals, each with a unique consciousness, each with the potential for fear, love, hope, dreams, all fed into the machine. That's one world. The Imperium has millions of such worlds. You've now spent over 90 minutes thinking about what it would be like to live in a universe where 3 seconds of doubt costs you your skin, where hesitation is met with systematic torture, where your flesh becomes parchment after you die, where suffering isn't a tragedy, it's a resource, where everything, even agony, serves the machine. This is Warhammer 40,000. This is the Imperium of man, and the darkest truth. Within the logic of that universe, it might be necessary. The Imperium is monstrous. Let's be clear about that. What they do to their own people is evil by any reasonable moral standard. But the alternative is chaos, tyrannids, orcs, necrons. 100 existential threats, each capable of extinguishing humanity completely. In a universe that hostile, where every moment is survival balanced on a knife's edge, perhaps monstrous methods are required. Perhaps the Imperium's brutality is the only thing standing between humanity and extinction. Perhaps they're doing what must be done. Or perhaps that's just the lie they tell themselves to justify unspeakable evil. Perhaps there's no good answer, no clean resolution, no philosophical framework that makes this acceptable. Perhaps we're left with a simple, terrible question. What would you do? If the only way to keep humanity alive was to do this to humans, to create a system built on systematic brutalization, where doubt is punished with agony, where flesh is processed as raw material, where suffering is weaponized into discipline, would you? Could you? Would you sign the orders, perform the procedures, witness the corrections, process the materials? Would you become Commissar Roth, drinking yourself numb while maintaining a system you know is monstrous? Would you become Mediki Henna, praying for steadiness while your hands perform atrocities? Would you become Trooper Markus Venn, functioning perfectly while dying inside? Or would you become Commissar Thane, choosing principle over survival, ending up as a servitor, consciousness trapped in a prison of meat and metal for eternity? What would you do? Would you hesitate? Let me tell you something. In the Imperium, you wouldn't get 3 seconds to decide. The order would come. Your body would be moving before your brain finished processing the moral implications, because that's what the system creates. That's what judicial flaying teaches. That's what the spectacle of suffering accomplishes. It removes the space between thought and action. It eliminates the pause where morality might intrude. It transforms humans into perfectly obedient machines who kill and die and suffer without the complication of conscience. And it works. The Imperium has lasted 10,000 years. Humanity survives, at the cost of everything that makes humanity worth surviving for. Somewhere in the galaxy right now, a young Guardsman stands in a trench. He's 19, he's thinking of home. His hands are shaking, the order comes, fix bayonets, charge. For just a moment, barely a heartbeat, a fraction of a second, he starts to question. He can see the enemy positions. He can calculate the casualty rate. He knows this is suicide. A question begins to form, why, but then he sees the Commissar. He sees the hand resting on the bolt pistol. He remembers the stories whispered in barracks. About Trooper Venn, whose skin is the wrong color now. About the Medici Bay where screaming never stops. His body moves, immediately, without thought. The question dies unspoken. He charges. He might die, probably will die, but he won't hesitate. The lesson has been learned. The system works. Fade to black. In the darkness, a sound continues. Artillery thunder, machinery grinding. And beneath it all, if you listen closely, if you allow yourself to hear what you'd rather ignore, the sound of screaming. Distant, constant, eternal. The sound of 10,000 procedures occurring simultaneously across a galaxy. The sound of a civilization that survives by consuming itself. The sound of humanity processed into fuel for the machine that claims to protect it. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. That's the tagline, the famous line, but it's not complete. The full truth is darker. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And in war, there is only service. And in service, there is no room for the luxury of being human. There is only obedience. There is only discipline. There is only the endless, grinding machinery of survival purchased at any cost, even the cost of everything worth surviving for.